Hey everybody, Bonehead from the Bonehead podcast, and the Amazon roster has been revealed. Not quite everything, we don't know the tier, and quite frankly, most of all, the most important thing, we don't know the cost of the rerolls, and we don't know the skill access for some of the players. Now, I don't think the skill access is going to be all that shocking, although this is Games Workshop, so who knows, and the rerolls I am expecting to have gone up from 50k. But what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at the biggest changes in the roster, the good bits, the bad bits, and then we've got 3 starting rosters that we've brewed up that I think are probably going to be where we go. Now, we don't know how much rerolls are, so we've made that a factor, and we can kind of make a good guesstimate as to what the roster looks like out of the box and what you might want to tweak, and basically kind of starting to think about what it's going to be to play against a ton of Amazon teams when this drops. I think they're going to be super popular. They're an interesting team now, and that is beautiful. Okay, so the biggest changes to the Amazon roster, and there are some big changes. Basically, I think the top thing we've got to talk about is the fact that there are no longer 0 to 4 blitzers. Now, we saw the introduction of an additional player type, the blocker. We weren't sure about the label. We weren't sure if they were going to have them on top and we're going to have a positional rich roster like Nobility, or whether we're going to have a streamlined roster, and this is a streamlined roster. 2 throwers, 2 blockers, 2 blitzers. That is it. So you're basically going to see these positionals in every roster ever taken for Amazons, with the potential exception of the thrower, but we'll come to that. So the blitzers have gone from 0 to 4 to 0 to 2, which is a pretty monstrous thing to happen. If you've ever played against Amazons or with Amazons, the 4 blitzer was the absolute foundation of that roster. Well, quite frankly, it doesn't matter anymore because they don't have block. Amazon blitzers have lost block, which is a massive thing. I think that makes them the first blitzer that doesn't have block. Instead, they've got dodge, jump up, and this new skill, hit and run. Now, we're going to talk about hit and run in a second, along with this skill, defensive, that the blockers have got, because those are 2 either new skills or basically new skills. I don't think we really ever saw defensive much unless it was taken as a random agility skill. So we've lost that potential for those 4 blodge guard pieces basically right out of the gate. And now they're different players with no block, so they're going to take a little bit more development. Now, we don't know what their skill access is. My guess would be these guys get agility and these guys get strength. It feels like that's going to fit into the pattern of team building that Games Workshop's gone with. So probably no more blodge guard quite so soon. In fact, no blodge on this team whatsoever. In fact, no block on this team whatsoever. Now, we do have blockers, though, but in traditional Games Workshop fashion, they don't have block either. 2 of those. So we've lost 4 blitzers. We've now got 2 blitzers and 2 blockers, none of them with block. But they have got, the blockers on this roster have got a super juicy stat line. This is going to be in the running for I think a seriously impactful positional. Now, stat line is awesome. The skill set is all right, actually. It's not as good as you'd want it to be, but it's not bad. So they don't have block. What they do have is strength 4. Movement 6, agility 3+, and armor 9+, which makes them stronger than an average aligned woman and tougher than an average aligned woman. They still have dodge. So this is a strength 4 piece that starts with dodge, no block, which I like the balancing point, no claws, even though the model kind of looks like it has claws. I'm hoping they're going to be representative in size. We saw the Ulfwereners, and the Ulfwereners were not strength 4 models. The look of the blockers don't look strength 4, and in fact the blockers look more like blitzers and the blitzers look more like blockers. But I don't really care. It doesn't really matter, right? We're all going to use Punga's miniatures anyway. So skills and traits, dodge and defensive. Massive stat line. Movement 6, strength 4 is Ulfwerener Bull Centaur territory. Strength 4, Ag 3+ is Chaos Warrior territory. It's the only other player out there, I think, that's got strength 4 and that extra agility. And the fact that they start with dodge is really, really, really awesome. Now, we don't know the full skill sets for these teams, as in we don't know what skill allowance they're going to get. When it comes to the blitzers, I think we're going to see general and agility as their kind of starting point, with strength on a secondary. It is possible that they'll leave the strength on them, but I don't think they will. I think the blitzers here are going to be your... I think they want them to be Edge 3 plus elves, basically. And then you've got the blockers here, which I would bet money that they're going to get strength as a general, so strength as a primary. Now, there is some contention out there already, and I've seen it in the comments of the video and also in our group chats and on the Discord. Are they going to get general access on a primary? Now, every other blocker does get general access on a primary, whether they're Chaos blockers, Nurgle blockers, Nobility Bodyguard blockers, you know, Black Orc blockers. Blockers get access to general on a primary skill. Now, if these guys don't, it's going to be real interesting. If they do, it means that they are one skill up. With Edge 3 plus and Movement 6, it's not hard to get a couple of TDs to get that Movement 6, Strength 4, Edge 3 plus Blodger. Amazons may not have got quite so form Voltron, but now we've got blitzers with an interesting skill and blockers that are just one skill away from being so dominant on the pitch, it's basically Adrian Peterson. Now, we've talked about two skills that I think we do need to go into a bit more depth in, because when I was talking about in the last video, I got confused, didn't know. So, the blocker comes with dodge and defensive. Now, defensive is known as the anti-guard skill because it is an anti-guard skill. The difficulty is we can't remember when it happens. So, we've pulled it out here. Defensive, during your opponent's turn. Marked opponents cannot use guard if they are next door to a defensive piece. During your opponent's team turn, but not during your own turn, any opposition players being marked by this player cannot use the guard skill. So defensive means that on their turn they cannot use guard. Now, if they get strength access, and again I've seen some comments about this, that means that they are quite close to being blodge guard that doesn't allow your opponent to use guard. So that guard defensive is actually really close to being a reality. It's kind of like this dreamed of combo that no one could ever really be bothered to do. Well, now you're going to see it, and there is going to be a definite choice, I think, when it comes to these blockers as to whether they get block for blodge, for strength for blodge, or a cheeky bit of guard to combo with defensive. They're strength 4, they have got dodge, right? So it's going to be so difficult to land a blow on them, and having guard and defensive could mean just absolute disaster for a lot of teams. Still think that lining up against dwarves is going to be a challenge, but those guys have still got armor 9+, so actually this is an absolute tank of a positional, and I bloomin' love it. It's really interesting. It's not what I was expecting at all, but it is a really interesting set of skills and stats. I think it's going to be really fun to explore that. Now, the blitzers may not have block, which means that when you're blitzing with them, it's not going to be quite as good, but blocking with them is really good now because they've got hit and run. So after you block, not blitz. If you're still standing, so if you haven't taken both down, and therefore if you haven't got wrestle or whatever, you can move one square into an unmarked square. So, I want to just go through this again from the article. After a player with this trait performs a block action, so it may be as part of a blitz action, but you're kind of moving anyway for a blitz action, they immediately move one free square, ignoring tackle zones so long as they are still standing. They must ensure that after this free move, they are not marked by or marking any opposition players. So, yeah, they can punch a dude and then bounce away into an open square, which is kind of like a reverse sidestep. Now, that is going to be really interesting, especially when you've got the potential here of a defensive guard piece. Those blitzers, even though they are unskilled, are going to be able to just hit and step away. It's basically going to be, it's not going to be Krav Maga, that's Frenzy, isn't it? That's definitely Frenzy, Mighty Blow, piling on. Dirty player. But hit and run is a really interesting skill. So you've got that kind of step away. Now, when it comes to playing a low armored, non-block, medium strength team, elves, Skaven, you want to dodge away. If you've got Edge 2+, it's fine. The first thing you do is step back, you know, back, like the safety training that we all probably have been through one way or another. You get that kind of disengagement. When it comes to Skaven, you can't really, because even though Bloodtithe Ben makes them religiously, Edge 3 dodges are not free. Edge 2+ dodges feel like they're free as you like, but Edge 3+, not free. Even with dodge, it feels like a 2 followed by a 2 is going to wreck your face, and it's going to happen. Don't need to do it. You just set up a profitable block, have a crack at them, push them away, and then you get a chance to step back even further, which is really going to be interesting. And there's going to be some really fun ways to kind of use that to your advantage. It's going to play out similarly to something like Fend or Stand Firm when it comes to positioning and holding the ground. That's what Amazons have kind of always been around. Like I said, Form Voltron, it's all about the shield wall, the dodge guard, blodge, spam wall. Well, that is kind of still there in that you've got to position real good and you've got to rely on dodge to keep you alive. But now this gives you a little bit more flexibility, and these gals give you a little bit more punch. Right, so we know how much the positionals cost. We don't know the tier, we don't know the rerolls, we don't know the skill access, but we can now populate how much things are going to be and a kind of starting point for the Amazon rosters, so you can get to grips with what you're likely to play against or play with, because Blood Bowlers, we love some exciting shiny new things. So out of the box build is the out of the box build: 2 blitzers, 2 blockers, 2 throwers, 6 linemen, question mark on the rerolls. This comes in at 860, which is quite a lot, to be honest with you. That means if the rerolls are 50, 60 or 70k, it doesn't actually matter how much they're going to be. You are only going to be able to buy 2. So if you go with all 12 players out of the box, that's 860k. You've got a lot of dodge, you don't have a lot of block. I think with this roster, you are likely to want to start with 3 rerolls, and this kind of gives you the option to drop the 12th man. Now, out of the box, you've got 12 players. So if you put all 12 players into your roster, you're going to only have 2 rerolls, and you will have 20, 40k left over to pile into dedicated fans. The interesting thing about Amazons, everybody here, right, is low armor, no block on there. You're going to want either a bench, or you drop player number 12 and take the Apothecary to keep your players alive. That is kind of standard Amazon tactic, and that itself has not changed. I think we'll see a different roster more regularly, though. This one here that I've tentatively titled the new normal: 2 blitzers, 2 blockers, 1 thrower, 7 linemen, 830k. So the factor here, we've got 12 players at the moment. This one, obviously, you've got 1 more lineman than comes in the standard Games Workshop box. Who knew? But at 830, it means that if the rerolls are going to be 50k, you're going to be able to start with 3 without dropping that 12th player. You can drop that 12th player, it comes in at 780, and then if you've got 70k rerolls or 60k rerolls, you can take 3 of them. If they're 50k rerolls still, you can take 2, 3 of them, and an Apothecary. But I think this is going to be the starting point, and depending on those reroll costs, I think if it's 50k, this is what you're going to see. You're going to see either the 12th Amazon on this roster, or you're going to see that 12th Amazon dropped and have that Apothecary, 3 rerolls, and 20k to go into dedicated fans for a league. I really do think that's probably going to be the one we see the most. However, we can drop the thrower, and it gives us a little bit more in the way of cash, which I have titled the old school build, because Amazon throwers were okay. We didn't see them very often. I don't think we're going to see them that often now when it comes to strict list building. So 2 blitzers, 2 blockers, 8 linemen to 12 players brings up to 800k. That gives you 200 there to focus on Apothecary, 2 to 3 rerolls, and you still got the 12th man. Now, when it comes to that thrower, the reason I don't think that they're going to be an absolute must-buy is even though your players are dodge and edge 3+, you've got no speed. So throwers are brilliant at last-ditch efforts, and I really like the skill set of this thrower, but you don't have a catcher with integral catch. You don't have a speedster with that kind of score now front. Even Nobility, who don't have the best thrower in the game, have got those movement 7 blocking blitzers with catch. You've got that integral stretch playability. Norse, the Valkyries can play pitch and catch to each other because they've both got pass and catch. You've got that kind of interplay. The thrower here, I don't think you're going to see quite so regularly, although I do think this roster will be the most frequently seen, because even though that thrower is 30k more than a lineman, and therefore, depending on the reroll cost, can cost you a reroll to start the league with, or can cost you that Apothecary to start the league with. It does have a very cool set of skills. Starts with dodge and pass, which is exactly what you'd expect from an Amazon thrower. Passing 3+, nothing's changed there. Nothing's changed at all, except they've got 2 skills on them. Safe pass, which isn't going to come up frequently, but to represent the snake being there, basically, if you fumble on a throw, you don't fumble, the activation just ends instead. Basically, the snake is there to grab the ball, to protect the ball if you drop it, which is pretty cool. If you were going to be like hooning the ball around a bit, it might be worthwhile. The key thing here, and this is going to be down to you to decide whether you want this skill or want the extra cash towards a team reroll, and I think that factor really depends on whether they've increased the reroll costs. 50k, this roster, go nuts. Maybe drop the 12 person, take an Apothecary, and then after a first game, pick up person number 12. It's probably the right way to start. If they're 60 or 70k, which I can see them maybe raising to 60. I wonder if they'll do something really aggravating and put them at 55. It's definitely a chance. Then actually you kind of got that trade-off of, do I want the thrower now or do I want the thrower later, because my focus is going to be on my guys forming kind of that combination of supports and dodge resilience. On the ball for this thrower means that they are movement 9 on the kickoff. So when you're receiving the ball, on the ball allows you to move 3 squares. Now, I'm assuming that also is somehow representative of the snake, like jumping out and grabbing the ball. That would, I think diving catch would have probably been better for that. But anyway, plus 3 squares, and if your opponent does throw the ball, they just get 3 squares of movement, essentially. It can be really, really, really cool. Now, what you'll see in that regard is this thrower being the center of a really fast-paced running game. Fast out the gate. That extra 3 squares means that thrower is going to be able to get the ball and then move with a mighty movement 6 to kind of be where you want them to be. It's 30k, you get passing 3+, safe pass, and on the ball, all rolled in for that. And if you are interested in skills, then actually it's very likely that they're going to have passing, which means you do get access to leader. So you'll see the thrower, I think, very frequently in tournaments to kind of take a leader reroll there to save essentially 20k for your roster to sneak a star player in. I mean, they've got block, and this is they've got dodge, and this is the thing when it comes to the skills, we don't know what access they've got. I'm going to assume that every player on this roster is going to get general access, which means every player on this roster is going to be super juiced up to take block. It's not exciting, but it is a great skill. The lineman kick is going to be great fun for you as well. The thrower gets some exception. You can take accurate and become passing 2+. You can get sure hands. On the ball, sure hands means that you are reliably running to getting the ball and then maneuvering to where you want to be. And even with pass 3++, you'll be able to flex it out a bit. And if you've got those rerolls on your roster, it doesn't matter that you won't have any catch or high speed targets. Block is always going to be great as well. On the blockers, block for strength 4 with dodge. Strength 4 blodger is just filthy. It just, you know, Griff is just filthy, and that is going to be filthy. Guard, sidestep, if they have access to those 2 skills, are going to be great as well. That sidestep piece, look out for that in developed blockers, I think, because when they kind of go block, guard, maybe sidestep if they get agility access, that guard defensive little sidestep strength 4 piece means that they're going to get into a brawl a treat. The other thing is that those guys can be your primary ball carrier. They're edge 3+, put sure hands on them to just be reliably getting that ball. If they've got agility, get catch on them so that you can throw them the ball. Throw them the ball, not thrower them the ball. Although the thrower is doing the throwering, so that kind of makes sense. And then you've got the blitzers there, block, tackle, sure hands, guard, sidestep. They're all going to be great skills. We don't know what access they're going to have. The blitzers with hit and run are going to be fast. They're going to feel fast because your opponent is going to have to keep trying to grab them to keep them into place. And with a single good block, they can disengage without having to use a blitz. So they're going to be difficult to pin down. But this roster is absolutely looking like those blockers are going to be the show here, which is very cool because that's not what it used to be. It used to be 4 blodge guard pieces and wounds. That's all the rest of the roster was. It was just and other people and supports. Well, now you've got 2 mini Griffetters with some interesting blitzers, a potentially really fun, if not great thrower, and some line women there that are 1 skill away from being an absolute nightmare. We don't know the reroll costs, but I think this is the most frequently seen Amazon roster. And if you are planning on building your own roster or getting a third-party roster, you're going to need this, in my opinion. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think, what your first thoughts are of Amazons. I am very excited to get the reroll and the skill angles so that we can go fully into team guides and stuff like that. We're so close, but I like the look of it. I like the look of it. It's different. It's not as good, I don't think. Well, I don't know. You've kind of taken 4 aggravatingly good players and replaced them with 2 potentially amazing players and some aggravating blitzers. Interesting one. It's different. It's not the same, but it's not the same. And I think that's just... change is as good as a rest. And I think the change here is going to give us some really interesting Blood Bowl to play. And that, quite frankly, is all I care about. That is a complete win. Now this, I don't think is going to be OP, which is wonderful. Those blockers are going to be mighty on the pitch. The rest of the team's going to be quite vulnerable, and that's fun. That's fun. You're going to get Amazon rolled. They're going to get Amazon rolled, and that's okay. I am excited. Anyway, let me know what you think, and we'll be back soon with more Blood Bowl content. Happy blodging. Thanks very much for watching. We really appreciate your support. If you want to support the channel even further, please like and subscribe. It really does help us out. Or come join us on YouTube members or in Patreon, where you can get exclusive access to some content, some loot, early access to basically everything we do, as well as regular competitions. Or you can pick up some Bonehead Podcast loot either on our website at boneheadpodcast.com. We've got the Dungeon Bowl things, we've got tokens and stuff like that, or on our Spreadshirt site as well. Everything you do just helps us make more content and hopefully do it of better quality. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Happy blocking.